The big news, which just broke 2 hours before we went live, Trump responding to the Chinese retaliation and tariffs. So many of us expected that once we started unleashing big tariffs on other countries, and I expected those tariffs to be big tariffs, 10, 15%. This would be the area we would start with. Trump went higher. I mean, some countries got 10%, others countries got 30%, 40%. I mean, Vietnam got a disproportionately extremely high tariff rate for the 1.1% tariff rate they had on us, which they've already offered to get rid of. And so all these high tariff rates, I could understand some countries choosing the wait and see approach, but I can't see them all doing that. When we're doing it against 60 countries on every continent on the globe, how are we going to expect every single one to just wait and see and not retaliate? Some are going to retaliate, if not only just to contain some amount of deterrence and say, if you try to economically strong arm us, we will defend ourselves. And so the Chinese responded to the 25% tariff rate, which then stacked to a 50% tariff rate with their own tariff rate of around 50%, which immediately hurt small businesses around the country. And I don't know if you've seen some of this testimony, but it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. Let me show you guys some of this testimony, because it really is just sad. Here is 4 pieces of testimony from different small businesses of them posting online on Reddit in order to try to get advice from other small business owners as they're having to deal with record high tariffs that are going to put them out of business. 54% tariff bamboo shops. Any other small shops trying to figure out what to do? I've single-handedly created and ran my small business for almost 3 years. I sell bamboo clothing and bedding, and now with this tariff, I'll likely have to close. Does anyone have any American-based manufacturers? I'm devastated that all my hard work is going to be pulled out from underneath me. I just hit my 10,000th order last week. 10,000th order. I remember hitting the first video I posted that hit 1,000 views. I remember how much that meant for me. I remember the first time I hit these different milestones that meant a whole lot to me. Or, the first time I did a video of a certain style. I mean, 10,000 orders. And then you hit this milestone after 3 years of business. You think you're going to keep going. And then out of nowhere, you're told that you're going to be thrown into the midst of a trade war with such high tariff rates that it's physically impossible for you to continue to operate your business without it going under if the president does not remove the tariff immediately and show it to be a bluff. But so far, we're hearing commentary from the president where he's suggesting that it could be both permanent and negotiable. I whatever that means, whether that is to increase his leverage, it is decreasing investor confidence, it is decreasing consumer confidence, and it is meaning that small business owners like this who might think, look, if I just have to wait a week, I can wait a week. If I just have to wait 2 weeks, I can wait 2 weeks. They have no idea what to plan for. And so that means they might close their doors and then find out a week later after closing the door, hey, the tariff has been removed. All that hard work, those years of work, thrown into the sky. Done away with. 54% tariff. Now, mind you, this is 54%. So these are all posts about the tariffs before the big tariff update I'm about to tell you guys about. Here's another small business. When to raise prices due to tariffs. I'm wondering when everyone is planning on raising prices. Have you done it already, or are you waiting for the dust to settle / hopefully improve? So a lot of people are saying that the tariffs have yet to affect me. And maybe it won't affect you that much. It's certainly going to affect certain industries and people who consume certain products more than others. But a lot of it also isn't just due to you feeling only some of the effects and don't worry, it's all over now. Some businesses are still hoping, just like I talked about, like they're living on a prayer that this is all a bluff. And so every day that passes and it's not a bluff, you see the Dow, the S&P, and you see all of these stocks go down that are reliant on international trade, which could be somebody relying on just 10% of their parts from overseas to up to 50% of their parts overseas for something manufactured here to something completely being dependent on overseas manufacturing. For example, microchip manufacturing in Taiwan, which a tariff has been placed. You're going to have to keep buying from them because there's just no other competition. So that is an increase in prices that is just going to happen for anybody who uses electronics that are based on those types of super advanced microchips, which is a lot more of the electronics in people's daily life than you would assume, especially when it comes to high-level computing work in high-tech industry. So we're talking about Silicon Valley. Oh, now we're getting in the way of people like Elon. Now we're getting in the way of people like Musk. And this is why when you talk to Elon, he's saying right now, how about a 0% tariff rate with all of Europe? That's my new idea. The very idea which Europe has offered and was rejected by the Trump administration. Either way, these prices will eventually have to be passed somewhere, either through cuts to staff, either to the consumer, but ultimately, it's got to be felt somewhere. That cost has to be borne by some group in society, and it is going to pass down to the consumer in many cases, but they're still waiting on the hope that maybe it's a bluff. I have a little breathing room in my direct prices, but my wholesale prices are likely below cost. Definitely below cost if this extra 50% goes through. I'm focused on direct. Chinese aluminum tariff, 73%. We have a small business and ordered $3,380 worth of aluminum parts from China. Parts entered USA on the 31st. The DHL requires $2,483.21 for an import duty, or they will send back the parts in 5 days. When we asked for the bill, this is what DHL sent. This is impossible to profit off of Chinese aluminum, meaning that they're going to have to completely find a new supplier. And then the idea is, and this is the brilliant idea that the Trump team has, don't worry, just go buy the American aluminum, And there are American aluminum providers, that's true, and you can buy aluminum from them for a higher price. But when you have everyone dropping Chinese aluminum and moving over to American aluminum, and you've given the American aluminum providers a monopoly, prices are going to increase, whether it's American aluminum, Chinese aluminum, who cares what the aluminum, whether it's illegally imported aluminum, smuggled aluminum, prices are going to increase. Well, I didn't see this coming. Just got an email from one of our Chinese distributors saying they will no longer distribute their products in the U.S. with the reason offered as, effectively, the U.S. has become too difficult of a market to continue selling to, and they make more money elsewhere. No one in the U.S. makes comparable products. Now, this tariff war, trade war, because now it's a trade war because the Chinese have responded, and now it's affecting American manufacturers and small businesses, which are going to go out of business if things don't change in the near future. In fact, many are already going out of business. Definitely those that were already in difficult economic positions. This is the type of thing that could be a death blow for them. And for the others, they're underwater, holding their breath, waiting for a lifeboat that the Trump administration signaled they may or may not throw out, signaling that these high tariffs might actually stay permanent. And look, not everybody within the Republican Party is on board with this. You're going to have certain, free trade warriors, Reaganites from the past and others coming out and crusading for it. For example, Rand Paul was on CNBC. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Rand Paul. I know his neighbor isn't either, and many others amongst American society who doesn't like for example, his shenanigans around 9/11 healthcare. The healthcare for those 9/11 heroes, the firefighters and police officers who ran into the Twin Towers to try to save as many lives as the building was collapsing around them. And now, because of that service, they're getting cancer because of the smoke inhalation and other things that happened during that time. And I wasn't a big fan of that. I'm, of course, not a big fan of his Ukraine policy, but he is somebody who is definitely, annoyingly, dedicated to his principles. And so when you listen to Rand Paul here, he is somebody who's been a free trade warrior forever. And so when he throws out these numbers on CNBC, this is somebody who's now, while he's been a sore thumb in the side of many Democratic, maybe you would say social welfare initiatives, he's now a thumb in the side of Donald Trump's tariff initiatives on the networks, arguing against him.
You have to start from talking about the truth. One of the things they say with Canada is, oh, there's a 270% tariff on dairy products going from the U.S. into Canada. Well, you know what the real tariff is? 0. That's a big difference between what the truth is. So there's a certain amount of goods, dairy goods, that go to Canada every year, and they go at 0%. If we exceed a certain amount, there's this ridiculous 270% tariff, but we've never encountered it. And the USMC renegotiated it and raised the level that's under zero. Trump should be congratulated for USMC raising the amount of dairy that goes in at zero. But we have to have an honest debate. We can't go around saying that there's a 270% tariff when that's not really the truth.
Well, the thing is, the word tariff has just become trade deficit. Like the way they're using words is incredibly dishonest, and it misleads the American public. The math equation that they've used to determine how to make Vietnam's tariff rate 90% in their equation, when their actual tariff rate is literally 1.1%. That is such distortion in order to lie to the American public. Don't call it a tariff policy or a round tariff. Just say, look, we don't like their trade deficit. We don't like trade deficits, even though if you want to be a wealthy, powerful country, you're going to have trade deficits with other countries. That's going to happen. But apparently, by principle, we're now punishing countries for having trade deficits with us because we want them to buy more American products. American products that Trump acknowledges we don't yet have the manufacturing to even begin to export the amount that would be necessary to make up for the massive trade deficits that we're punishing countries like Vietnam for, before we even get to the question of whether they have the consumer market for American Ram pickup trucks and like American cooking cookware and grain and corn and such. Or we're going to be asking these countries to basically put forward massive government subsidies in order to make up the difference to get access to the American market, which is not like based in principles of free trade, things that Rand Paul and other free market liberals or libertarians or conservatives might like. It's more a lot of mercantilism. And we're going to see a lot more of that from the Trump administration going forward. But that doesn't really matter if these people like come on TV and like complain about it, because until Congress asserts its authority over tariffs, then Congress is going to keep allowing the president of the United States to unilaterally increase tariffs to record numbers. And when I say record numbers, I really do mean record numbers. Let me show you the numbers that we're getting now for tariffs from President Trump. The last number that was just announced, this was right before we went live, was 104% tariff on Chinese goods. Let me say that again, 104%. Now look, the way we got here is because we escalated and they escalated, and now we're escalating in turn. We've placed these massive tariffs across the market, including about a 50% tariff on China. China responded with basically a word for word, line for line, bar for bar copy, and then threw, 50% tariff our way, as well as tariffs in specific areas, and, a retaliatory tariff, which Trump warned them against. He said, if don't do this, or we'll go even harder with our tariffs. The Chinese did it anyway, knowing that they could very well, go into a trade war with the United States and the economic consequences of that, which Trump tried to use the economic consequences of going into a trade war with the United States as an assurance as to why it will not happen. Saying like, look, guys, it's not going to happen because we're just so powerful and our consumer market's so strong that these countries would not dare. Right now, the EU is biding its time trying to negotiate with the Trump administration, but they won't do it forever, and the Chinese didn't wait. And so the Chinese placed their own tariff on American goods, which then hurt many of the small businesses we were showing you. And now we see Trump's retaliation, 104% tariff, 104%. Now, this tariff is reportedly not immediately going to be placed. It's going into effect at midnight tonight. On the 9th, it's supposed to go into effect because they talked about it, or at least hinted at it a little bit late yesterday, and now today, boom, it's out into the public. You've got until midnight tonight, so in about 5 to 6 hours, if the Chinese do not announce that they're pulling back their tariffs and essentially concede to the United States in front of the entirety of the world in this mercantilist, strong-arming economic tactic, which, I mean, whether you think Trump should do it or not, I mean, that's what it is. If they do that in front of the whole world, then they can avoid it. They're not going to. And so the tariff is going to go into effect. And so at midnight tonight, there is going to be 104% tariff on goods from China entering the United States, meaning that any small business that's operating on the margins and does not have a gigantic inventory where they can just wait this out, if it can be waited out, because again, the Trump administration is continuing to sap investor confidence by not letting them know whether this is a temporary process for negotiation or it's permanent. And while that might temporarily strengthen your hand, it certainly weakens the hand of the investor. Big business Trump, art of the deal Trump, big business, Mr. Apprentice, once again, bringing the economy to new heights. Now, let me just throw out there that this tariff is technically not the actual effective tariff rate tonight. And I don't say that to say it's actually going to be much lower and, it's actually, haha. No, it's actually going to be higher. Because there's another factor here. See, the way that Trump has announced these tariffs, they're layered in different ways. And it has made it particularly devastating for anybody who let's say you're getting parts from around the globe and you have to get something from Venezuela, something from, okay, let me be realistic. You need to get something from, say, France, and you have to get something from South Africa, and you have to get something from Vietnam and Japan, right? You have to get different components of different machine parts, 50% of them from around the world, and 50% of them are manufactured at home. Well, the more borders they cross, the more tariffs that can be added. And so you layer on the tariffs. And this doesn't just work in this mechanism. There's other things that can create that as well. And another factor that can create another layer tariff is being trade partners with countries that the United States does not want you to be trade partners with. And in this case, it's Venezuela, because China is a trade partner with Venezuela. So that technically puts the tariff rate on Chinese imports, if you add the 25% Venezuelan adjustment, to 129%. 129% tariff on Chinese imports. I cannot think of any small business that could eat those costs. They're going to have to find other distributors. Those distributors will go up in price because people will be swarming to them. They will take advantage of the opportunity. These are profit nodes as businesses. That's their goal, is to make money, and they will take advantage of the situation. Some might be ran by moral people, but profit is not a moral mechanism. And so they will increase their prices because they will have the captive market and because their inventory is going to be stretched. Because if all of a sudden you've just lost one of the biggest aluminum markets in the world, it's not just a question of, hey, I'm a price gouger and I'm going to price gouge. Even though, of course, your product's in demand, you increasing the price somewhat is expected. You're just not going to have enough aluminum to provide for all the businesses. And so your prices are going to go up. I mean, in time, and if this stays permanent, and the fact that we don't know if it's permanent is certainly also not helping with investing in this industry. But maybe aluminum industry in the United States can expand, but that takes years. That takes time. Even if we were to say that this is all going to succeed, which is far from certain, to put it lightly, this would still be years off. I mean, the type of stuff we'd be seeing the fruits of the labor by the end or even after Trump's term. He can't cut enough red tape in the world to get those factories up by the midterms, or certainly not up in enough time to save all these small businesses. And so small businesses around the country are being sacrificed, and those who cannot cover the margins, and those who are reliant on, different imports for their manufacturing in the United States. So even American-based manufacturers and automakers, where there have been layoffs in Iowa, there's been layoffs in Michigan, there's been layoffs, thousands of layoffs across the country, and auto manufacturers and other manufacturers who are relying on foreign components for the manufacturing here.
Black-pilled Kiwi got a Tier 2 subscription. Have you seen this port fees thing that's going to be implemented? Apocalyptic for American consumers. Shipping lines with Chinese-built vessels gotta pay.
The more they throw this out there, and the thing is, as much as it's not impossible to imagine that we could survive a readjustment, right? And it's going to be painful, where we're just trading less and less and less with the Chinese. And it'll be extremely painful. We're going to see big contractions. It would probably be devastating for American consumers and households. But if we expand that past just China to those who do business with China. Like Trump, and you know what? Before I wouldn't think about even talking about this because, you know, what we're talking about now was like the doomsday scenarios. Well, now we need to think about what comes worse, you know? Once you reach rock bottom, Trump finds a way to get a pickaxe. And so I'm a little worried about, I mean, what if he did secondary sanctions on people who trade in certain Chinese industries in order to try to escalate and win this thing? I mean, like this example, like shipping lines with Chinese built vessels got to pay. Chinese built ship. There's a lot of countries and a lot of companies that are not trading even Chinese goods that are using Chinese built vessels. Now they got to pay. If this is something that spills over to the countries that do business with China, well, let me tell you, okay? They were welcomed into the WTO. Whether you think that was a good idea or a bad idea, it happened. You can't reverse it. The world has economically integrated with China. And if you make it a question of America placing high tariffs on the EU and high tariffs on China, and then trying to punish the Europeans more for possibly trading with the Chinese, this is how you push them away as not only trading partners, but even allies. This is how you push other countries into the arms of the Chinese by saying, like, it's either us or them. And you're not going to win that. Especially if they think that come 2 to 4 years from now, somebody else is going to come into power who's going to have a different thought about things. Because the gap in ideology and administration between the Democrats and Trump's party when it comes to international trade could not be wider. Oh, one last thing I wanted to say about this, because I don't know how. This is wild to me. I'll just play it in its entirety. As we are waiting for the Chinese to announce their tariff on American goods over 100%, which I am expecting, I wanted to show you what they're doing in the United States from their embassy account in order to try to make a soft power offensive on the issue of tariffs and convince the American public, hey, maybe you shouldn't be tariffing Chinese goods. You buy so much goods from China. We're big trading partners, you know? Look, I show speed. He did a backflip. Whoa, you know? They're trying to figure out how to navigate this. They decided to post this video of Ronald Reagan, 40th president of the United States, a free trade warrior, from a speech he made in 1987, advocating in favor of free trade and against protectionism. The face of the GOP being used against the Republican president engaged in a trade war. It is bizarre to see an anti-communist crusader used by what is, you know, claimed to be an ostensibly communist government in favor of free trade, so they continue to send us their iPhones and such, or at least iPhone-like products.
You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group.
This was posted by the Chinese government on their social media to critique the American president on free trade. This is 2025. What is going on? Isn't that bizarre? It's crazy, really.